You shout it out, but I can't hear a word you say. I'm talking loud, not saying much. I'm criticized, but how your bullets ricochet. Shoot me down, but I get up. I'm bulletproof, nothing to lose. Far away, ricochet, you take your aim. Far away, you shoot me down, but I won't fall. I am titanium. You shoot me down, but I won't fall. I am titanium.
Hi, my name is Cedric, a Form 5 student of GHS Boyatown and equally a student of the Youth Advocacy Network. I and my colleague Miki have a general research topic on the effects of deforestation on the environment and human health. As we all know, deforestation is a massive cutting down of trees without replacement or reforestation. This is common in most less economically developed countries like Cameroon because these countries, their economy is based mostly on the primary sector that involves the cutting down of trees by industry for exportation. Also, commercial farmers cut down trees to establish farmlands. This has a negative impact on our environment as well as on human health. Examples of places that have been deforested include this piece of land that you're presently going to see. How commercial farmers have put down the trees in order to establish a plantain plantation. This area was formerly covered by trees, but as of now, it has been replaced with a poor secondary vegetation. In the subsequent part of our video, we are going to be giving you a detailed knowledge on the effects, ways we can remedy or stop deforestation. Areas that were covered by trees, but presently as of now, the trees have been felled, leaving the soil to be loose and exposing it to soil erosion. This is very dangerous to our health. Hi viewers, to continue with part of this video, I would like you to meet our expert who is going to talk to us about the causes, the effects and some ways in which we can remedy deforestation. Say good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Say, please, can you tell our audience who you are?
Okay. My name is Matthew Piscopo. I've been in Cameroon for 3 months now. I'm here on the behalf of the Peace Corps, a special program called Peace Corps Response. Typically, a Peace Corps appointment is for 2 years. I'm here for just 1 year because I already spent 2 years as a Peace Corps volunteer in Mali doing agroforestry. I'm working for a non-governmental organization that's located here in Boya. And the organization is called Trees for the Future, and we work with small farmers to develop agroforestry systems on their farm in order to provide fertilization for their fields in a sustainable manner that limits the amount of land required to produce enough food to feed their families and also to make some extra income. So to address the effects of deforestation, here in Cameroon, 70% of the deforestation is caused by fallow agriculture or swidden agriculture. And this is a system of agriculture where a farmer will farm one small piece of land for 4 or 5 years. And in the past, they used to leave the land for fallow, which means they don't farm it, they allow the bush to grow back. And they would leave it for about 7 to 9 years. After, maybe about 15, 20 years ago, the period shortened to about 4 or 5 years, and today you could find some people that farm and then leave fallow for only 3 years, and then they have to come back to the land because there's a reduction of land because of an increase in population. But still, you have more people practicing fallow agriculture, more mouths to feed, and so more bush is being cut down. And to supplement this 70% that's caused by fallow agriculture, you have large-scale timber operations, and you have large-scale agriculture. And this is from multinational corporations from Europe and the US, and Cameroon as well. CDC is one of them, but they're starting to privatize now by selling it to national and international buyers. And also the rise in the export economy is a cause for deforestation. Coffee and cocoa is fetching a high price on the international market, so it provides incentives for farmers to grow these crops in a monoculture setting in order to ship to Europe or to ship to the United States. And also government subsidies with agricultural goods provides more incentive for large businesses to practice agriculture with a lack of corporate responsibility, which increases the amount of area that is wrapped up into agriculture forever, because these monoculture systems, they degrade the land to a point where the land depends on these fertilizers and pesticides, further reducing the quality and the possibility that it could return to virgin forest.
I would like to ask you, what are some of the effects of deforestation on our health and equally on the environment?
Okay, so you'd like me to specify if it's on the health of humans, and then afterwards we could discuss the effects on the environment?
Yes, sir.
But the two are very much linked. So the effects on the environment are, they change the water cycle. As we know, trees provide a special service to filtering the water as it percolates through the soil. And also it retains the soil moisture in the soil by providing cover. So in this forest here you can see that it's very moist. We haven't had rain for 4 days. Outside where there's full sun, you'll see the ground is very dry. And that's because the leaves shade the ground. They call it photosynthetic active radiation. And that's the amount of light that reaches the forest floor. Here it's very low. So the photosynthetic active radiation that this plant receives is maybe 5%. In some weak forests where there's been deforestation, where they've taken a lot of the good quality timber, you might find that 90% of the radiation from the sun reaches the ground. Out in the fields it's 100%. So when the sun reaches the earth, it causes the water to evaporate. And this water that evaporates into the air, it travels many, many miles, and it could leave the ecosystem entirely. But when there's tree cover from deforestation, when there's tree cover in the absence of deforestation, the trees create their own microclimate where they store the water in the soil and they drink it and they transpire it very slowly into the atmosphere. And that creates clouds. If you're up on Mount Cameroon, you can notice that there's cloud cover in the rainforest very often, almost every day in the afternoon, and that's because of the transpiration from the trees. And they create clouds and moisture that rises and then creates rainfall in its own weather patterns. So this water is recycled into the system over and over again. But when there's an absence of trees, the trees are not able to regulate this water, and it leaves. It goes to other systems. And also in the absence of trees, it's related to the water cycle as well. It's a process called desertification. Desertification is the loss of soil fertility, the total loss of soil fertility and water. So this is related to water erosion and also land erosion. When there's an absence of trees, the wind carries the soil particles, the small fine particles of good quality earth. It carries them many distances. Here in West Africa and Cameroon, we have what we call the Harmattan winds. And this is very common up north, where you have very dry lands. In the dry season, the whole earth is barren. So strong winds blow the soil particles down south here. And when they reach here, they fall on the land. But up north, in areas where there used to be trees, where now it's deforested, this area, the soil on this land is now being carried further south. So the desert keeps moving further and further south. And even here in the rainforest, you could experience desertification on a small micro level, where if you have one small area of land that is being farmed unsustainably with the absence of trees, this soil too could become unproductive. So this affects human health in many ways. The obvious reason is there's a lack of water. People here in Cameroon, 70% of people are farmers. And in order to farm, you need water. You need water, light, and nutrients. Deforestation affects all of these. In the absence of water, there are not many things that you could grow. Up north, you could grow millet, you could grow sorghum with low amounts of rainfall, maybe 400, 500 millimeters. But here, we're accustomed to 2,000, 3,000 millimeters of rain. So people are accustomed to a certain diet. And up north, you'll find that there's malnutrition at higher rates than here. This affects infants. They have the infant mortality rate. Where up north, it could be, for children under 5, it could be 1 in 3 children that will not reach their 5th birthday. Here in the southwest, it's much higher because the land is more productive. There is more rainfall, but this is changing because of deforestation, which is complicating the water cycle and issues like global climate change, global warming. And also with deforestation, I mentioned, there's the erosion from air, from wind, and from water as well. So we have to get at the root causes of the deforestation, and a vast majority of deforestation is for agricultural purposes.
Oh. So I would like to see some of the causes of deforestation. Let me say, like large industries that uses trees for exploitation, commercial farmers that cut down these trees for their farming purposes. So what are some of the ways or methods which we can remedy this act that they do?
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, to me, it's a train that can't be derailed. The commercial agriculture, typically, I could say, it started back in the 1940s with the start of the Green Revolution. And this Green Revolution started in the US with the Food and Agriculture Organization, which was funded by philanthropists, very, very rich people like Rockefeller, who paid a lot of money to different research organizations to try to increase the yield of crops. Because at this time, in the 1940s, and then growing into the 1970s, there was a global food crisis where there are people all over the world, in Asia and Africa and South America specifically, that were not meeting their food requirements. So the Food and Agriculture Organization produced a lot of hybrid seed varieties and a lot of pesticides and herbicides that were then distributed throughout the developing world in South Africa and Asia, and not so much in Africa, but it's slowly moving in, and it has changed the course of agriculture forever. And because of this Green Revolution, they estimate that 1 billion people that were hungry had now been fed. But what we're left with is a system that's not sustainable, that's practiced by large organizations, large businesses like Heracles and CDC, for instance. CDC was started by the Germans, and the Germans pulled a lot of immigrants from the north, from Bamenda is a very common place, and they came here to Boya to work for CDC on this large monoculture. A monoculture is a farm that has only one species, and it requires a particular type of seed that grows a lot quicker, but it's also more susceptible to diseases, to insect infestation. So the amount of inputs that are required to farm this system are they increase, and they farm the same area over and over again. So coffee and cocoa are some of the crops that are used, grown for export by large businesses or large entrepreneur farmers, and it's contributing to deforestation, of course. And the way to combat this, it requires everybody. For one, it requires administration at the government level. You could say corporate responsibility, which is growing. Businesses like Guinness or Coca-Cola, they adhere to corporate responsibility, where they have to give back to the community to help develop the nation at the same time, because they're taking a lot of wealth from the people. People drink soda, they drink beer, and this money, it leaves the village. People earn money here by selling coffee and cocoa and plantains. they buy Coca-Cola and beer, and this money leaves. So the idea of corporate responsibility is to give money back. And one of the issues that is affecting large-scale agriculture here are subsidies. And subsidies are provided by the government in order to make the crop more cheap on the international market. So coffee and cocoa is able to be sold at cheaper prices to compete, and it gives incentives for farmers to practice this large-scale agriculture. So the process needs to be de-incentivized, meaning the government needs to reduce the subsidies in order to allow for more people to practice small-scale agriculture. And in a small-scale system, it's easier to regulate the amount of inputs that you put on the land. And it's easier to incorporate trees into your farming system like agroforestry. But large businesses, they're only motivated by profit, and typically they're not from the area, so they do not really care about the effect of pesticide drift, which is the movement of pesticides off the farm into neighboring communities. Since their families are not living in these communities, they don't mind the fact that pesticides are airborne and people are breathing them in, or the pesticides are now in the water source, or fertilizers that enter the water source create algae blooms, which is called eutrophication, because in fertilizer there's nitrogen, and when this nitrogen enters water, plants in the water, they eat this to grow, and they cover the water source completely. So at the corporate level, it demands some responsibility. At the government level, it demands some de-incentivizing of agriculture, of large-scale agriculture, like Heracles up north. They received incentives from the government to start a 70,000 hectare palm oil plantation. So the land was given to them very cheap, cheaper than what a small farmer could purchase the land for. And the government gets the timber from the land. Heracles gets the land and they get the profit from it, but they give back very, very small amount of money back to the community. And this is not an example of corporate responsibility, but from the people as well, the small farmers and the students and your average Cameroonian, they also have responsibility to put pressure on these big businesses to reduce consumption for products that come from elsewhere, and to search for local alternatives, things that come from around the farm, and also to protest. If a large organization or business is moving in to buy your land, you need to be not manipulated by this large organization. You need to stand up for your right to live on this piece of land and practice agriculture as you had and as your grandfather and great-grandfather had for many, many years.
Okay, so I would like to ask if there are some international organizations that like fight against deforestation or try to reduce the rate of deforestation, because like in Cameroon, we have the Ministry of Public Health that advises or takes into consideration some of the harmful effects of deforestation, like the reduction of oxygen in the atmosphere. They do some of these things, and in collaboration with the Ministry of Forestry and Wildlife, and the rate of deforestation is being reduced. So I would like to ask you if there are some international organizations that like fight to reduce the effect of deforestation on our health and on the environment.
Yes, there are. There are some small grassroots organizations. One of them is called Greenpeace, and they're very active in deforestation in the tropics, where you have what you call biodiversity hotspots, where there's a large amount of life in such a small amount of area. And the consequence of deforestation on the health of the individuals there, mental health as well, because when a small community loses their environment, they also lose their livelihood. They lose their tradition, they lose their culture. When the forest is gone, people no longer have the medicines that they extracted from the forest. They no longer have the spices for achu. They no longer have arrow for their gari. So they suffer from it. In Greenpeace, they're very vocal in Europe and the United States, and they come to Cameroon as well, and they create reports to try to create awareness on the deforestation that's happening here. And there's also other higher administrative organizations like World Wildlife Fund. They are very active in preventing deforestation to conserve the habitat of of large megafauna, large charismatic animals like gorillas and elephants, specifically here in Cameroon. And also bilateral agreements with governments like the USAID program. They work with different small national NGOs all around Cameroon to fund them and to empower them in order to slow down deforestation. And also GIZ, which is located up here, and they work with Minfof, and they're very active up in the area south of Korup where Heracles is practicing the deforestation for the palm oil. So those are a few that I can name off the top of my head.
Okay. So it was nice meeting you for this documentary.
Okay, thank you.
Well, in addition to what our expert has just said, I would like to say that some other effects of deforestation, like the reduction of oxygen in the atmosphere, this is because most plants absorb carbon dioxide and photosynthesize through the leaves, thereby emitting oxygen into the atmosphere. Also, deforestation is gradually leading to global warming because the UV radiation from the sun directly hits on the earth's surface, which trees formerly usually protected. To add more light to that, I'll also say some other effects of deforestation are the destruction of houses or habitat for our endangered species. Most animals, as we all know, use trees like their houses. Animals like the monkeys, the squirrels, but when they are cut down, they are left without a habitat, and this is very dangerous even to our ecosystem. Viewers, to continue with this video, as you already know, the consequences and the causes of deforestation both on our health and the environment, as elaborated both by our expert and myself. I would like to tell you that deforestation is unstoppable due to the activities that we carry out, but the effects can be reduced on the environment and on our health. Firstly, we can carry out reforestation. This is the planting of trees in areas where trees have been existing. We can equally carry out a sensitization campaign of our community, our nation, and even the world at large. I hope you enjoyed this video. For presentation, I've been Cedric, and behind the cameras has been Miki.